So it took 40 plus days for the lawmakers of this country to finally reach a deal to open the government, making this the longest shutdown in the history of our country. Regardless of what your politics are, this is gross and it's completely unacceptable. We saw over 1 million people not get paid, thousands of flights that were delayed, and this economy has lost billions of dollars since the government first shut down. Now, some people look at what's happening and they say that's a political victory. We had a political victory. Depending on what your politics are, is this a victory? No, it is a symptom of a very sick system. Now, let's look at exactly what happened here. We had 8 Democrat senators. They broke ranks. Who are these people? Well, these are senators from the state of Maine, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Hampshire, Virginia, and the state of Illinois. The most surprising here is probably Dickie, old Dick Durbin. That's the number 2 Democrat in the Senate. This is a guy who's a party loyalist. He's right below Chuck Schumer. You think him and Chuck Schumer would be on the same page, but they were not. Now, this is the idea. The mentality going into this is a lot of these senators, they said, there's just no way that the Republicans are ever going to allow these subsidies to be extended. It's just never going to happen. We gave them an opportunity. Multiple weeks went by. Over a month went by. There was no indication the Republicans at any point in time were willing to compromise on the healthcare subsidies. So that's why they got together and they broke ranks. Now, it's also important to understand here that just about every single Democrat that's up for re-election in 2026, midterms next November, just about all of them voted against this deal. Now, you got people like Tim Kaine from Virginia. You understand why he broke ranks, right? Virginia is a state that has a lot of federal workers, and there was probably additional pressure on him from his constituents. So keep in mind, this is only the first step. This is something they call a test vote. There's still a lot of work to do in the Senate, and then they had to do like an amendment in order to fully fund the VA and the USDA and also the legislative branch, because they're getting full year funding all the way till September 2026. They have to send this back to the House. Once they re-vote on it, it has to go to the president. So we could be looking at an official ending of maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. Most people see this going through both chambers of Congress pretty smoothly, and they have the support necessary for it. Okay, so let's look at the deal, right? So this deal, it reverses the shutdown rifts, the reduction in force, the layoffs. It reverses over 4,000 layoffs. It funds the government all the way until January 30th. After that, well, we're going to need another CR. And the show goes on and on. But it does absolutely nothing for healthcare subsidies, the Affordable Care Act, and healthcare premiums that will be increasing for everybody, but specifically for the 22 million Americans that rely upon it. Now, who are these 22 million Americans? 80% of them, they are low-income household Americans. These people that work retail, they work service jobs, they're small-time entrepreneurs. They do not receive health insurance through an employer, so they rely on the Affordable Care Act premium subsidies. That will see their premiums increase by 100%, in some cases 200% or more. So that segment of the population, they're going to be hurting a lot more. Now, there's some confusion because everyone's premiums are going up. You know, like the average worker, if you get healthcare through your employer, you're going to see 5 to 10% at least increase. So everyone's premiums are going up, but nobody will be experiencing double or triple of their premiums except for these 22 million Americans, allegedly. Now, President Trump came out recently and said the problem is, him and also there's a lot of other Republicans that say the same thing, but basically the problem is this money for the Affordable Care Act, it's going to the insurance company. And the insurance companies, there's fraud, mismanagement, it's not efficient, all the rest of it, right? So the president was saying, let's just give the money to the Americans. Now, some Americans be like, yeah, give me the money. I'll take the money. I'll make my own decision. But the problem comes in is if you have a pre-existing condition where you have something severe, a terminal illness, let's say cancer, and $1,000 or $2,000 a month is not going to be enough to give you the care that you need. So for a lot of those Americans, they're going to be left on the outside. They're not going to have enough money in order to get adequate insurance to deal with their condition. Now, let's say The government reopens Wednesday, midday, just an estimation, right? November 12th, it reopens, let's say. Furloughed federal workers, they would generally report the very next day. So if it opens on Wednesday in the afternoon, chances are you're going to be coming into work on Thursday. This affects probably about 700,000 workers. And you should be receiving a text message or an email. Your supervisor should be reaching out to you if you are a federal worker to let you know basically the 5 W's on how and when you're supposed to report back in. Now, as far as back pay, which is a huge issue throughout the federal workforce, the back pay needs to be processed. It's going to take a few days to get processed. And for most people, I would say it would show up in the next check, depending on your pay cycle, because different agencies have different pay cycles. But I believe for most federal workers, I think the latest should be November 28th. But you're going to have to check with your agency, check with your supervisor to make sure that is accurate. Now, this whole back pay thing, it is an automatic function. The payroll processing should automatically occur. We are not waiting on any type of vote from Congress in order to guarantee your pay. Your pay, because of the 2019 law, the pay should be automatically given to you. So the good news is, yes, the federal workers will be getting paid. Also, the food assistance, it should flow normally. Over the next several days after the government reopens, the flights should stop being delayed. Now, talking about the flights, most people think that the real reason that this shutdown has been resolved for the most part, it's because of the airports. It is always because of the airports. What do we have coming up in a couple of weeks? That's right, we have Thanksgiving. You know how many Americans fly during Thanksgiving weekend? It's over 10 million Americans that are flying. And what we're experiencing right now in airports, we have a lot of people going, sick. They're calling in sick. You have TSA workers, you have air traffic controllers. And what is really alarming, look at the air traffic controllers. You know how many air traffic controllers are retiring every day? It is 15 to 20 air traffic controllers that are retiring every single day during the government shutdown. That is not a normal rate. Now, you could be saying, yeah, we got 14,000 of them. What does normal look like? The average for a regular day would be 4. So we're seeing like 4 times as many, or even 5 times as many air traffic controllers retire. And I've talked to some of them. I've talked to some air traffic controllers who say, hey, listen, I'm not going to stick around anymore. This was the final straw. I will use my skill set in the aviation industry, and I'll be able to command perhaps a higher salary, and at least I'll have a more stable career, and I'm out. Which should send alarm bells ringing throughout the federal workforce, because it's hard to get air traffic controllers. We have been operating on a shortage for over a decade, for multiple decades. This is not a President Trump issue. It happened under President Biden, President Obama. We cannot get enough air traffic controllers. I think another aspect of this whole thing is the fact that we still have the filibuster. I think that's a victory. I think it's a good thing. Hopefully it doesn't go away anytime soon. It's been around ever since I've been alive. I'm 43 years old. The filibuster has been around since the 1970s. I think it's important to keep. I know there were threats. President Trump wants the Republicans in Congress to get rid of the filibuster, and they can, but it would be foolish to do so. I think the rule was created for a reason, and it helps and it ensures that the legislation that's passing throughout Congress, the majority of Americans agree with it, whether you are Republican or Democrat. I think it's a very important thing. Now, in addition to the shutdown that's going to be closing relatively soon, there's another huge issue next year, 2026 and moving forward. And that issue is 2 letters, AI. Artificial intelligence is going to displace workers. It's going to take a lot of jobs. It's going to make some jobs obsolete. But there are some government jobs that are insulated from it, meaning they're protected from the AI wave. These government jobs, they'll be here this decade and probably next decade. If you want to know exactly what I'm talking about, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.